Welcome back, focused learners, to today's Explainer. We're stepping right behind the mixing desk to break down the absolute production magic of Miley Cyrus's global smash hit, Flowers. Look, we've all heard it on the radio, we've all belted out that chorus, but today, we're gonna look at the actual nuts and bolts sonic architecture that turned this track into an absolute juggernaut. Okay, let's dive into this, because literally everything starts with the song's foundational narrative. Flowers acts as this brilliant response track. It takes Bruno Mars's 2012 hit When I Was Your Man, where he's singing I Should Have Bought You Flowers, and just completely flips that regret into a modern, ultimate declaration of self-reliance. I can buy myself flowers. It's an incredibly clever, lyrical inversion. It immediately hooked listeners by totally subverting our expectations and shifting the whole vibe from heartbreak to sheer empowerment. So here's our agenda for the Explainer. Think of this as our visual mixing board. We're going to solo some specific layers of the track step by step. We'll start with the anatomy of a hit, then we're building the disco groove, looking at the magic of drum gating, crafting vintage 70s strings, exploring some audio tricks called the slingshot and mirror, and finally diving into the sound of self-love. Let's get to it. All right, Section 1, Anatomy of a Hit, Beyond the Gossip. Now, when this dropped, the internet went absolutely wild, dissecting the lyrics for clues about Liam Hemsworth and the Malibu Fires. But while that adds emotional weight, the real secret to its massive success isn't the gossip at all. It's the brilliant sonic architecture. There's actually been a lot of chatter, and even a copyright lawsuit, claiming Flowers lifted from that Bruno Mars track. But when you put them side by side, it's so clear that Flowers is a total musical reinvention. Definitely not a ripoff. Sure, they both use an A minor chord to set the mood, but structurally, they're on completely different planets. Flowers gives us this driving, 118 beats per minute disco pop groove, with a super simple looping A minor, D minor, G, C progression. Meanwhile, When I Was Your Man is a 73 beats per minute complex piano ballad. They literally occupy entirely different sonic spaces. Moving on to Section 2, building the disco groove, the foundation. Imagine we're sitting right at the producer's desk right now, pulling up those raw percussion stems. The rhythm section really is the heartbeat of this track. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the insane attention to detail in the drum layering. To get that vintage disco feel, producers Kid Harpoon and Tyler Johnson use these really muted, kind of dead-sounding 70s kick and hi-hat samples. But to keep it fresh, they layered in these hip-hop style claps that give it a beautiful white noise fizz and modern stereo width. And here is the absolute producer secret: tuning. They didn't just slap a clap on there, they actually tuned those specific clap samples to an E note. Since the song is an A minor, tuning the percussion a perfect fifth above the root note means the drums sit perfectly in the mix. They never clash with the melody. It's a subtle trick, but it is pure genius. And driving that beat is a truly unique bass line. It pairs a classic 70s disco 4-on-the-floor kick drum with this highly syncopated bass technique. By using short staccato notes, the bass line actually borrows a bit from regional Mexican norteño and Tejano music, which gives it this super distinctive country twang. That genre-blending hybrid is exactly what gives Flowers its skipping, confident momentum. It seriously sounds like the musical equivalent of walking tall. Section 3, the magic of drum gating, chopping the beat. This is a massive part of the track's DNA. If you found yourself bobbing your head to the first half of the chorus and wondering why the drums feel so insanely tight, it's all thanks to a highly intentional engineering trick. To really understand this, we need to quickly define a term: sidechaining. At its core, sidechaining is just a technique where you use one sound source as a trigger to control an effect on a totally different track. It's basically telling the computer, hey, when track A makes a noise, I want you to do this exact thing to track B. So here is exactly how they applied this to Flowers. Step 1, the producer set up a totally silent track playing a steady quarter note pulse. That's our trigger. Step 2, they applied a gate plugin directly to the entire drum group. And finally, Step 3, they program that gate so the drums are essentially muted, and they only let sound pass through exactly when that silent trigger hits. By dialing in about minus 14 decibels of gain reduction, they cut off all the ringing tails of the cymbals and snares. That right there creates the incredibly tight, choppy, vintage 70s feel in the first half of the chorus. It's what makes the groove so absolutely infectious. All right, on to Section 4, crafting vintage 70s strings, the atmosphere. You see, a great mix is all about contrast. When you have super tight, dry, dead drums, you need something big and atmospheric to balance it out. And Flowers nails this with a gorgeous cinematic string section that sweeps in during the post-chorus. But how on earth do you make modern digital string plugins sound like a multi-million-dollar analog recording from 1975? Well, you treat them like analog recordings. The producers started with really high-quality digital strings, specifically Contact Session Strings Pro. Then, they ran them through virtual Neve preamp saturation. By using a -20 pad, they aggressively boosted that warm vintage tone without blowing out your speakers. Finally, they soaked those strings in an AMT 140 orchestra plate reverb to give them a massive live room tail. And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer power of modern mixing. They applied OTT multiband compression right onto those strings. But instead of just making everything louder, OTT aggressively focuses on specific frequencies to pull out the gritty, granular character of the instrument. If you listen really closely, this compression makes the strings sound so organic and textured that it's like you can literally hear the horsehair of the bow moving across the strings. It beautifully grounds the whole digital pop track in rich acoustic reality. Which brings us to Section 5, the slingshot and mirror, audio ear candy. Now we're moving from foundational mixing into what producers actually call ear candy. These are the subtle, deeply psychological production tricks that take a solid demo and turn it into a massive, brain-tickling, unforgettable hit. Now, I want you to think about the song for a second. Miley sings the pre-chorus, started to cry, but then remembered I, and then boom, the chorus hits. But wait a minute. Why is the very first beat of the chorus, the downbeat, the exact place where you expect a massive kick drum explosion, totally silent? Music theorists actually call this stop time technique the slingshot effect. By intentionally leaving beat 1 completely empty, the producers create this momentary jarring vacuum. Your brain fully expects a thud, and instead it gets silence. It winds the rhythmic tension back like a bowstring. So when the full instrumentation finally unleashes on beat 2, the drop feels incredibly explosive. Narratively, this is just a masterpiece. That split second of silence acts as the exact pivot from the emotional vulnerability of the pre-chorus to the fierce, confident declaration of the main hook. And right as she makes that declaration, we hear the flying mirror. Listen closely to the chorus. Right after Miley sings a line like I can buy myself flowers, there's this vintage, slightly nasal, flanged, oboe-like synth that plays in the gap. It's a classic call and response element. It acts as a melodic responder, perfectly filling the negative space so the energy never drops. But even more than that, it acts as a musical reflection. It's like a mirror of self-confirmation in motion, agreeing with her vocals and keeping us totally hooked. Finally, Section 6, the sound of self-love, a record-breaking run. Every single one of these meticulous decisions, the perfectly tuned hip-hop claps, the chopped and gated sidechain drums, the vintage Neve saturation, those psychological slingshot delays, they were all building an infrastructure designed for ultimate longevity. So, the crucial point is this staggering, record-breaking number, 112. That is the number of weeks Flowers spent charting on the Billboard Adult Contemporary charts. And 57 of those weeks were at #1 before it finally went current. You know, a song doesn't achieve that kind of historical, record-shattering cultural resonance just because of some celebrity gossip. It achieves it because the sonic foundation is, frankly, flawless. It really makes you reconsider how you listen to music, doesn't it? So I want to leave you with this question. Next time you hear a massive pop anthem on the radio, will you be able to listen past the lyrics? Will you be able to spot the slingshots, the flying mirrors, and those gated drums that are secretly driving your emotions? Thank you so much for joining me in the studio today for this explainer. Keep your ears open and never stop actively listening.